In this segment today, we're going to be looking at the demand for labor. And to do this, you're going to need the handout that you can get using the link just above where you clicked on this video clip. It's called Demand for Labor, and I encourage you to download that and print that out before going any further with this clip. Once you've done that, what you can see is that what we're going to be talking about is a marketplace for labor. There are buyers and sellers. The buyers, in this case, are the employers who want to buy the time and skills and expertise of the employees. The sellers, in this case, are the employees themselves. They're selling their time and expertise. Now, in this table, you'll see at the top, there's just a little description in this little hypothetical company. There's a description of how increasing the number of workers, labor input, how increasing the number of workers can change the total output. And you can see that as they go from 5 up to 13 workers, that the total output increases. But as you might expect, having seen some other economic tables like this, the increment to the total output goes down. For instance, if we went from 5 to 6 workers, our total output would go from 300 up to 800. And what that means is an increase of marginal product, or a marginal output of 500. So total output goes up by 500 and by adding the 6th worker. And as you see, if you add 7, 8, 9, and so on workers, the total output continues to go up, but the marginal output, the incremental output, starts to go down. This is pretty typical in a lot of manufacturing settings. It doesn't mean that these last workers hired are bad or sloths or anything like that. It just means they're entering into a production process that can make some use of them, but things get a little less productive, and the additional workers don't add as much as some of the first ones. Now, the fourth column on the top of the page is what we call the marginal revenue product, and that's just the number of the marginal product multiplied by the $8 per product that we get as revenue. So if we went from the 5th to the 6th worker, and that 6th worker increased output by 500 units, we could multiply those 500 units by $8 to get a marginal revenue product of $4,000. This blue line here on the chart is just that marginal revenue product line or column in the table, and it's a facsimile of the same graph that you've got on your handout. And you can see here, for instance, let's imagine that we're here at 9 workers. The 9th worker has a marginal revenue product of $800. You can find that on the table. The other line we have here is a wage. We're just assuming that the wages right now are $200 for some time period. And now we can use this as an employer to decide how many workers we would like to hire. Well, let's say we're at 9, we want to go to 10. Well, if you're at 10, the marginal revenue product is $400. That's the value of the extra output that the 10th worker would be responsible for. Or the arrival of the 10th worker means output would go up by $400 worth of product. But we only have to pay that worker $200. So that's a good deal. We should go ahead and do that. We should continue to hire workers as long as their marginal revenue product is higher than their wage. Now let's skip over 11 a second. We'll come back to it, and let's go to 12. Should we go to the 12th worker? Well, the answer is no. The 12th worker only generates about $120 worth of new output, and yet we have to pay that worker $200. So it doesn't make any sense to actually hire the 12th worker. Where we'd say you'd actually hire is right up to and just before you hit the 11th worker. Let's say 10.9 FTEs or something like that. Because what you're doing, if you can get close to that 11th worker, you'll still be getting more output than their wage. So we don't want to go any higher than 11. Now let's change the wage. Let me go ahead and change this line. We'll put it up to 400. I got to put the other end up too. And we'll change the label. Okay, and now the wage has gone up to $400. Maybe there's a shortage of workers, or they've unionized, or all of the above. And as a result, wage has gone up. Now the wage is up to $400, and look, This employer now isn't going to want to hire any more than 10 people, doesn't want to go out to the 11th or 12th, even though before he was willing to hire up almost 11 workers. Now he's going to stop just short of 10 workers. Now let's think for a second what we've just seen. We saw the wages go from $200 up to $400. Think of a wage like a price of labor. So as the price has gone up, this employer has demanded fewer and wants to hire fewer employees. If the price goes down, the employer would be willing to hire more employees. What does that sound like? Well, it sounds like this blue line is really a demand curve for labor. That's exactly what it is. It's just for this one employer, but it illustrates how employers will be sensitive to changes in price, i.e. wages, and as wages go up, they're going to want to hire fewer, and as wages go down, they're going to want to hire more. We can also consider, I won't try drawing it in, but we can also consider what might cause the demand curve to shift, especially to the right. The primary reason why a demand curve might shift to the right is if somehow the workers became more productive. Maybe they got some new machines that made them more efficient, or maybe they worked out a new production process that made better use of their skills. If anything could increase the productivity of these workers, then what we would see is this curve would just shift over to the right, and that would then allow, even at high wages like $400, that would allow us to hire more people, because each of the incremental workers would be worth more to us if they were more productive. It's also possible for the demand curve to shift to the left. This could be if the workers decided they need more breaks, or maybe OSHA comes in and decides that they are working in a hazardous environment and requires that they use more safety equipment, which slows down their work. All of those are, of course, very important concerns, but when that happens, that causes the demand curve to shift to the left. Okay, so that gives us a starting point for thinking about the demand for labor. In our next segment, we'll look at the supply of labor.